Today I'm going to tell you a story about my harrowing quest to create a useful, versatile, and uniquely affordable motion control system by combining the recent MOZA releases like the Slypod and the AirCross 2. Let's get undone.
Gerald Undone. He's crazy.
What's happening, everybody? I'm Gerald Undone, and I'd rather have my city burn down than hand over my pistachios. So our story starts back in April when I reviewed the MOZA Air 2 and when MOZA showed their new sliding monopod at NAB. I really enjoyed the MOZA Air 2, save for a couple of small issues. It's one of the best gimbals I've ever used, and I thought the Slypod was one of the coolest products at the NAB show. I asked MOZA at NAB if they had any plans to integrate control of the Slypod with a gimbal, like the MOZA Air 2, for a complete motion control system, because that seemed like a really useful combination. Rather than spend thousands of dollars on a dedicated system, just repurpose an already great gimbal for only a few $100s more. And I was told at that time that they were already thinking about that and were busy developing it. So fast forward several months to the beginning of September, which is about 7 weeks ago now, I finally received my Slypod in the mail, but the excitement was short-lived because the performance was very disappointing. You might remember reading a slightly cryptic tweet from me saying that I would recommend holding off on buying the Slypod until further notice. So let me show you why I said that. Here's a shot with the original Slypod. Do you see how badly it's moving back and forth and creating this very jittery result in the final sequence? This happened in pretty much every situation, unless you did a completely horizontal slide with a slow speed, but any kind of angle or faster movement or vertical, and the shot was completely unusable. And it wasn't just my copy. I reached out to 3 other people who I knew had the Slypod, and they reported the same issue. Caleb from DSLR Video Shooter and I spent an afternoon trying to see if we could diagnose the problem, but had no luck fixing it. I then informed MOZA, and they were seemingly aware of the issue and said that they were already working on it and would send me another one. They claimed that very few units were affected by this issue, but if you happen to experience this shaking that I showed you here with your copy, I would recommend contacting MOZA to get a replacement, because I can say that the new one I received did not have those issues at all. Alright, so now in the story, it's around the middle of October, and I finally had a working Slypod. I've been testing it for a few days and was mostly satisfied with the results, so it was time to combine it with the MOZA Air 2 to get that sweet motion control action. Except there was no way to connect the MOZA Air 2 to the Slypod. So I talked to MOZA about this and about my goal to accomplish what they showed in their product videos and on their website. There's several videos and graphics that MOZA put out to demonstrate the compound movements of the gimbal and Slypod and suggesting the integration of multiple pieces of MOZA equipment to make that shot happen. And the response I received from MOZA was, "You are interested in the MOZA AirCross 2. At present, MOZA AirCross 2 can be compatible with the MOZA Slypod." So I figured I'd come this far, I might as well get an AirCross 2. And when I asked about achieving the shots demonstrated on their website, I was given a link to an app with the email reading, "Both MOZA AirCross 2 and MOZA Slypod can be used in the MOZA Master App." This was in response to me asking in what ways will it be compatible, is there combined motion control for them? And now it's today. I've got the MOZA Slypod, well, 2 Slypods actually. I've got the MOZA AirCross 2, I've got the focus module, the phone holder, the extension and adapter cables, and the MOZA Master App. And guess what? They still don't work together effectively. There's no way that I know of to connect the AirCross 2 to the Slypod. None of the cables they sent me will physically connect the two, despite there being an illustration on the website showing a cable connecting them. And there's no way to link them in the app. And switching from one device to the other in the app essentially resets whatever you were doing with the first device. And if I have the app connected to the Slypod, you can't use the manual controls on the Slypod, so that's not a workaround either. Basically, you can either control the slider or you can control the pan and tilt of the gimbal, but not both at the same time, unless you wanted to physically adjust both controls on 2 different devices simultaneously, but I don't think that qualifies as motion control, and good luck getting a smooth shot. So I reached out to MOZA again, and it took me asking a very specific question 3 different times to get an answer, and the answer was still pretty vague. I asked, "I noticed on your website it mentions combining the 2 devices to get compound camera movements, and there's a graphic showing the gimbal moving together with the Slypod. Is this something that's available now, or planned for the future?" To which they responded, "MOZA engineers are working hard to develop it." So that's pretty much all I know as of today. Perhaps this will be a terrific motion control option in the future. For less than $1,000, you could get a pretty decent gimbal in the AirCross 2, combined with an innovative slider that has the potential to give you the most affordable and versatile motion control system available. But as it currently stands, they're just 2 independent devices, not unlike using a Ronin S on your Slypod, or using the AirCross 2 on your Rhino. There's no real advantage to having the pair as it currently stands, but I'm hoping there will be soon. So to help facilitate that, let's go over some of the issues I had trying to achieve the shots they advertised on their website, so that they know what to add to the app and firmware to make this happen. Alright, so let's start at the top and work our way down. So this first shot here is just a basic dolly. They've got the gimbal attached to the Slypod in the flashlight position, and they're just sliding out. And this one's easy, and you don't even need the app, because one of the things that I like about the Slypod, compared to a lot of other stuff out there, is that you can control it pretty well from just the device, which is great when you don't want to fuss around with an app. So first we're just going to put a quick release on the base of the Slypod, and then attach this to our tripod, and then attach the head. Now, I find this head to be kind of weird. It slides in with this odd nub and groove system, which then needs to be tightened down by spinning this collar, but it still has more play than I'd like, and I think it puts more emphasis on interchangeability than necessary. But it does work. Then we just need to take the quick release from the top of the head and attach it to the AirCross 2, and then slide the gimbal into the setup. And then we have the basic configuration for the majority of the shots that I want to demonstrate. Now, I don't want to give a full review on the AirCross 2 because pretty much everything's already been said. My plan for making a unique video was to make it on motion control, but since that's not going to happen, I highly recommend that you watch Brandon Lee's video on the AirCross 2 instead. I think he really nailed all the obstacles that you're likely to face and how to deal with them. And for a product breakdown, I think Tommy Calloway and Chris Brockhurst both have great videos on the subject. My opinion is that from a design standpoint, I love this gimbal. There's so many really smart ideas. I love the locks on all three motors. I love the fact that they combined a lithium battery pack like the Ronin, but also made it removable and swappable. And the charging port is really clever. It's in the battery, so you can charge the battery when removed, and when it's in the gimbal handle, you can charge it using this little porthole. Very smart. Although it is hard to see the charging lights when it's in the handle, so I wish that area was a little less tinted. It's also very light and offers a good payload for its weight class, and the price is very fair, so it's all wins in that department. But the truth is, it's just not as smooth or as stable as the MOZA Air 2, and this is why I recommended Brandon's video. We both tried to use the Sony a7 III with just this little 35mm f1.8, and it was still noticeably shaky at times. And I even struggled to balance the smaller combos like this. I found in order to get the a7 III to balance well, you have to mount it directly onto this L bracket and forego the included quick release, and you also really have to jam it all the way over to the far side. Now, when you do get it going with a compact load, it's quite nice. Like I said, lightweight, good design, but it just doesn't give me as much confidence as the MOZA Air 2 did, and for that, I have to take points off. It also has a rather aggressive auto-tune that tends to set the levels in a place that make it easy for the motors to freak out and start shaking or spinning uncontrollably, so I think that tuning needs to be adjusted in firmware. Also, judging by the reviews online, it would appear that some users have experienced rapidly diminishing battery life to where the battery is mostly useless after just a few months. Now, I can't really speak to this as I've only owned it for a few weeks, but it's something you should be aware of. Overall, the gimbal definitely shows a lot of promise, but it certainly has some kinks that need to be ironed out. Anyway, moving on to the camera moves. So to carry out this shot, all we have to do is press the plus sign on the Slypod, and it does the rest. The more you press the plus, the faster it goes. It's audible at all stages, but the volume definitely increases the faster it gets. At higher speeds, I would call it noisy and not usable in a scene where you were recording dialogue, but the slower speeds are usable unless you require absolute silence. This is on the first mode here, and the mic is very close to it, but this is what it sounds like. This is super slow. And if we go up to second notch, it gets a little bit more audible. This is still pretty slow, and then about 3 notches in is a pretty decent slide speed, but it starts to make a little bit more noise at that point. Here's what it sounds like. And then anything beyond this, and it's pretty loud, and it gets louder. And then to have it come back in, you just use the minus button and the same speed rules apply. You can also have it loop in and out by holding the plus and minus until the light ring turns blue, and then you adjust the speed as you would normally. The Slypod itself is an interesting animal. It's well built, looks cool, and is unique. But at the same time, you could look at it and ask, who the hell needs a monopod and a slider in one? When it's integrated with a gimbal, I get it, but as a standalone device, it's kind of limited as a slider. It only has a 28cm or 11-inch travel, so if you're doing basic horizontal slides, it's probably not ideal. But it is weatherproof, has manual controls, and a decent max payload of 4 kilos or 9 pounds when horizontal. But what it does do that most other sliders do not is a 9 kilo or 20 pound pedestal movement, or vertical slide. The ability to lift 20 pounds vertically over 11 inches in this form factor is unique, and might be useful to you as a shooter. And now that that shaking problem is fixed, there's nothing wrong with the Slypod. It's just peculiar. Again though, if they can figure out how to combine it with a gimbal for unified motion control, then they'd really have something. So let's get back to the shots and see what obstacles they'll need to overcome. Okay, so this next one adds an inception mode twist into the equation. Now this one's easy enough as well using manual controls because both of these movements can be set to infinite looping. But this is one area where the app fails. Like I said earlier, you can't program both devices at once using the app, so the easiest way is just to enter inception mode using the dial on the AirCross 2, choose the speed you want, and then make the Slypod loop in and out like I showed you before by pressing both the plus and minus buttons. This one works, no problems there. The next shot, however, drove me nuts. The vertigo shot. Now there is a dolly zoom option in the AirCross 2 menu, but I couldn't get it to work. I would set the A and B points for the focus module, set the duration, and then press start, but it just wouldn't do anything. I have a theory that it doesn't work unless you have two focus motors attached, one for zoom and one for focus, but I only have one motor as that's all that comes with the kit that they advertise, so it would be kind of stupid if you need a second one to use that function. You should be able to use what you have. You should be able to attach the motor to your zoom and just use autofocus if you want, or just use focus and not zoom. But the gimbal doesn't provide a prompt explaining why it won't start. It just won't start. And after about 2 hours of trying and reading every piece of documentation I could find, I gave up. But even if I got it to work, it wouldn't have accomplished the dolly zoom anyway, because again, there's no way to synchronize the movement with the Slypod. So I'd be zooming at a different rate than the Slypod moves, unless I got really lucky with timing. Now there is an alternative method by recording focus motor movement, but this one is subject to how well you turn the wheel. It basically records your wheel movement and then plays it back. This is a fun idea, but in practice it was jerkier than I'd like because I was trying to time how I move the wheel with how long it takes the Slypod to move, and it created little pauses and jitters that were visible in the final shot. The whole advantage of motion hardware is that you don't have to rely on human manual synchronization, because with a single shooter, it's very, very difficult. So in my opinion, the dolly zoom on their website is a bit misleading in its current state. Next up, we have these pan and slide combos that you could use for fixed point parallax. Now this is not something that you could do manually, so it requires that app. But again, you can't control both devices at once in the app, so you'll have to use the Slypod manually with its buttons, and then use the app to set the A and B points for the gimbal to pan. But the problem is, once again, trying to sync up the starting point of the gimbal with the starting point of the Slypod. And when you press start in the app, there's a delay in sending the command, so you actually have to start it like 2.5 seconds before the Slypod is about to loop back out, which is very tedious, and if you were working with talent, you'd look decidedly unprofessional. Now using the object tracking mode, you can kind of make this work. The app allows you to track an object using your phone's camera and then tries to keep its position consistent as the gimbal moves back and forth. This is the closest I got to a decent parallax effect, but the actual mounting of the phone was a problem. Their phone holder comes with a shoe mount, which I assumed was to go into the hot shoe of your camera, as that would be ideally placed for the object tracking, but this made the balancing issues I mentioned earlier so much worse. The motors gave out on me twice, one time nearly cracking my phone screen. So I wouldn't really recommend this approach as it's way too precarious. And again, I'd call this shot a failure, not accurately depicted, and one that could be easily remedied by allowing you to plot both the Slypod and AirCross's movements simultaneously in the app. And while they're at it, allow us to program focus positions too, because as it stands right now, the app doesn't even know that you have the focus motor attached. You can only control the focus motor or set A/B points by entering the menu on the gimbal itself. The app needs to be able to control up to 2 focus motors, but not restrictively requiring both, while also controlling the pan and tilt of the gimbal and the movement of the Slypod in a single interface, and you'll have yourself some magic. And all of these advertised shots will be easy money and not seem like false advertising like they currently do. Lastly, let's look at this one that they're calling the jib shot, which, when combined with the camera movement that a gimbal is capable of, kind of makes it a tiny techno crane. Unfortunately, there's two key components of a jib that are missing on this combination, and those are balance and lateral stability. A jib generally has a way to add counterweights to achieve balance, but with the gimbal, camera, and most of the Slypod on one side, this setup is significantly front heavy. Now we can counteract that by strapping some weight to the handle side, but it's not made to do that natively. However, I found that if I put 2 3-pound dumbbells in this empty satchel I have, I can achieve a pretty good balance. So that's probably close to 3 kilos to counterweight a fully extended Slypod, AirCross 2, and A7 III combo. And then it feels good, and you can jib it with minimal pressure. But we're still lacking that lateral stability I was talking about, as it noticeably wiggles from side to side. So it works, but we'll have to be very careful about how we move it. Credit to the AirCross 2 though, its ability to quickly lock whichever axis you want makes this whole thing possible, as we can just change the tilt from follow to lock with one button, and we're ready to jib. Now throw in some camera movement using the app, and we've got some groovy mini techno crane shots. Alright, I think that's enough for one video. This was a frustrating one for me. I like the products individually, and I think for the most part they're worth their price, but I don't find them to be revolutionary or must-buys. However, I think the potential for them to work together as one of the most affordable and independently useful kits of motion control is what makes them so tempting. Unfortunately, I was put off by the graphics and marketing that make it seem like that functionality is as easy as buying both products, and that it's ready to go as of now, which it's not. And my inability to get a clear answer from the company makes it impossible for me to guarantee that we'll ever see that functionality in the future. I want them to, and it would definitely make these products exponentially more compelling, but for now, we'll just have to wait and see. But that's going to be it for me. I hope you found this video entertaining, or at least helpful, and if you did, make sure you leave it the old thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. But if you did not find this video helpful or entertaining, well then you probably need to rebalance your jib. Alright, I'm done.